People often ask me, how do I write? And it's a very interesting one because I think they get a great surprise when I say, I write on the moon at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that really sets them back a bit. But it's true, I do write on the moon. I write on a certain phase of the moon, and that's how the elders taught me to write. And I used to be a person who would wake up at 7 in the morning, pretty much was my waking time. But when I began working with them and bringing the old law of Waitaha into the world, I began waking at 4 o'clock. That was amazing. And I woke every morning at 4 o'clock. And after that had happened for several days, I got hold of one of the elders and said, I keep waking at 4 o'clock, and all I got was this smile and the answer, that's your writing time. That's the Wairua time. That's the time of spirit. That's your time to write. So thereafter, these early morning shifts, as you might call them, beginning before daylight, were quite magical for me, a very special time. I would wake with such clarity. I never used the alarm clock. It wasn't necessary. I simply woke at 4 o'clock on the bright time of the moon, the 14 days of the bright moon, which is 7 days before the full moon and 7 days after the full moon. So it's a special time. And when writing, it was a journey into a special place. It was an activity that called on all that I am, on my own mana, my understanding of what had been shared, the weaving together of things that I'd been taught over many months, even years, by the elders, into a lovely weave. And it was so special because there were certain principles that they had taught me that I brought into place. And in the end they called it walking in the sacred. Walking in the sacred. And it came about this way. The first thing they asked of me was that I do one thing at a time. Well, prior to that, I was a very multiphasal person. I was a principal lecturer at School of Education. I had huge administrative duties, and I thought, quite an expert at doing 5 things at once. So they deprogrammed me. They had to. I was useless for their needs. To carry the sacred law forward, I had to move in a certain way. The old way, the way of the ancestors of long ago. So the first thing then was to learn to do one thing at a time. And they taught me that in a very subtle but very telling way, because they sent me across to the West Coast, and that's a 5-hour drive, and I had to collect a stone, a special stone, placed there in my hands by others who'd gathered it from the river, the Pounamu, the special stone of that river, the special healing stone of Waitaha. And I brought that stone back, and it was a lovely journey. But then later I had to go back, and they asked me to gather something else. And I did that, and this is just a few days later. And then when they asked me to go a third time, then I thought, what's going on here? This is crazy. This would drive an accountant mad. I'm going to the same place 3 times when I could have done those 3 things in one visit. And then when I complained about that, they said, think about it. And then I realized that I had to do one thing at a time. That if I did one thing at a time, if I went somewhere for a stone, one of the sacred stones, the healing stones, if I gave it time, if I allowed the elders who'd gathered it, or those who were of that occasion, that event, to tell their story. If I did that, then I was allowing space for wonderful things to happen, for spirit to move. I began to realize that doing things one thing at a time allowed you to walk in the sacred, because it was done once and forever. Done once and forever. Do we bring that very often into our lives today? Will we allow that room, that space, so that things are done once and forever, done in such a good way? Well, that was the way of the old ones, and it was huge learning for me, and I brought that into my writing. I wrote in the bright time of the moon, and my writing began at 4 o'clock in the morning. And when I sat down to write, I had one thing in mind: do it once and do it forever. There would be no second drafts. I wrote once. It was complete and done forever. And how did I do that? Well, I brought in another principle that I was taught, the principle of honouring the mana of everything around me, even the mana, or the essence, the spiritual essence of each word. So when I was writing a sentence, and I was looking for the special word to go in that place to express my thoughts of that moment, when I did that, if it didn't just come instantly, I didn't think I'll do it next time. I'll just put any word there, and when I do my second draft or my third draft, I'll find the one I want. No. I learnt I had to wait. And I waited upon the mana of that word, and the word came. And it fitted. It was of that time, of that moment. I waited on the words. The Greeks have a wonderful saying. It's a wonderful way of looking at life. It is simply that you can't step into the same river twice. It changes. So what I was writing in that moment was of that moment, and every word was bound to the other word, and every sentence within that paragraph was bound within the paragraph. And when the paragraph felt right, and the mana of everything felt right, it had all been honoured, then I shut the door on that and moved on. It was done once and forever. So that's what I learnt. That was the way of things in the writing. And it became the way of things in my life. It was the way that we moved. That we used the energy of the moon, which I've spoken of at other times, that very special energy that's been seeded within our very bodies and hearts and minds and spirit over eons of time, to give us special energy around the brightness of the light. And I'd followed an understanding that things can be done once and forever. Done once and forever, if we follow the rule of one take, one task at a time. And we can apply that, we can put that into all our life. You know, it's a special moment when a child tugs at our trousers and has a question, a little one at your knee. And the question's something you don't want to answer at that time. But usually if we just take a moment and honour the mana of that child and its question, it's easily satisfied. It has a place. Its mana has been honoured, its spirit. And then it stands taller. It knows it's listened to. It knows it's part of a nurturing family. It knows its voice is heard and not brushed aside. So walking in the sacred is something we bring into the everyday. if we walk with the understanding that there is mana in everything, in the stone, the rainbow, the tree, the water, the people around us, each and every one, and the child. So that's how I write. And in that type of writing, and that time for writing, I achieve far more than I ever achieved in the past.